episode 18 of the podcast series. Today I have with me Daniel Bleecher.
Yes, hi, happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Just to give a little introduction about Dan the man. So, Dan is a mental health counselor with his own private practice, a college professor, and associate director of the Bridges to Adelphi program here at Adelphi. Dan is an absolute treasure here at Adelphi, and he also has experience working in rehab and addiction.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
You got it. We'll get into some questions. So, first question, I want to talk about the mental health epidemic in America, right? I mean, there's been major increases in depression, anxiety, addiction. Where do you think this stems from, based on your experiences?
That's a really great question, and there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Yeah.
There's throughout the last several years, we've experienced a significant amount of change as a society, whether it's the support that students are getting from the different stages of education. We're getting opportunities to have access to a lot of different technological platforms, social media, AI, other things like that. Additionally, we had COVID that really turned the tables on how society interacts with one another, and the industry that I always try to stay away from is, the politics side of things has also caused a lot of strain in the ability to form meaningful relationships with other people. So I think what it really comes down to is that society as a whole has sustained a significant amount of shifts over the last several decades, and we're not keeping up with providing enough support for people to navigate those changes. And I think that's what's really taking away from people's autonomy, people's ability to make decisions, anxiety, depression, and even substance use. A ton of people relapsed during the pandemic. Rehabs were operating at capacity, outpatients were operating at capacity. That was another significant variable. But I really think, again, it's just the amount of change that we've gone through, and the lack of support during these changes has been really, really hard, if I had to take a stance.
That's a very interesting approach, because I think everyone can agree that there's been a lot of change, but it's almost something that's coming to my mind. It's almost with, like, take cigarettes, right? Like, cigarettes come out, but, like, no one really knows much about it. And I feel like that's kind of where we are at with social media, right?
Yeah.
AI, where people are constantly using these things, but nobody even knows the long-term effects of using these things. And I think short-term wise, you can see that mental health definitely has been a factor that just people are affected from that, for sure.
Yeah, and that's the issue. When you think back about our parents' generation, our grandparents' generation, specifically with cigarettes, a lot of them were smoking, and they were smoking in diners, in restaurants, on airplanes, in hotels. And doctors were going on the news and saying that, like, smoking is okay. But it was only several decades later that the research came out that showed us that cigarettes and smoking is not good for you. So anytime something happens, it does take several years for the research to kick in before we actually know the adverse effects. So, like, even when COVID, a lot of the kids, unfortunately, they went from having complete access to their friends to having to go to school online within a matter of weeks. So we're not starting to really see the implications of that change until now. And any studies that are being supported on those processes are happening now. So we're already behind the curve because the process has already begun, and by the time the research keeps up to it, the damage is already done, and now we're trying to catch up to something that's already being perpetuated. So it's been an issue with everything that we see.
And then also lack of regulation, right? Like, no one is regulating these things. There's nothing really. Maybe one person says, "Oh, AI is terrible," but then another person says, "Oh, AI is amazing," right? So it's like you don't even know who to listen to, right? And it makes things very confusing.
Absolutely. A lot of these things are valuable. The goal is to benefit society, make things easier. The part that makes it maladaptive is the relationship that we have with it. Whether it's, again, the relationship that I have with drugs. There are certain drugs that are beneficial to society. There are ones that can harm society. But it depends on the relationship that you have with them and the types of, like you said, the regulation that comes with it. So that's a huge point that goes into this.
Gotcha. And then, in your experience as a clinician, do you notice any patterns among clients that tend to result in poor mental health?
So I see it from a lot of different perspectives. As a clinician, I see a handful of things, and as an educator, I see a lot of things as well. And they're relatively different. When
Mm-hmm.
it comes to being a clinician and you're working with a variety of different clients, you have male, female, you have people that are a member of the LGBTQIA plus communities, you have older, younger, a variety of different people. What truly makes somebody unhappy is usually very individualized, but it's more so like what challenges are they experiencing that can be generalized towards all clients. For example, a lot of my male clients, a lot of them experience a significant amount of difficulty with intimacy. We're talking about relationships, we're talking about sex, we're talking about things that are challenging to talk about with other people, let alone your own partner.
Mm.
So when I work with a client in those areas, it's really just creating a safe space where they could feel heard and they could feel valued and they could feel respected, and that it's okay to talk about these specific things. Additionally, a lot of the things that I see that impact people's mental health is comparison. So if they see another person, they immediately see what that person has, and it makes them think of like the gaps in their own life. Oh, this person's in front of me, this person's ahead of me, and that makes me feel less than.
And I'm sure that's intensified from things like social media.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's gotten significantly worse because of social media. Additionally, it's been a disadvantage to me as a clinician too, because I'm 30. I'm younger than a lot of the clients that I support, and I'm in a close age to a lot of my students. So if I have a client that's older than me and I'm trying to help them, there's usually a level of stigma where it's like, what is this person who's younger than me? What are they going to be able to do for me? And I have to kind of overcome that stigma because they see me with a master's, they see me with a license, they see me working in a couple of different positions, and they think, oh, like he really has his stuff together. What am I doing wrong in my life? Meanwhile, they only know.
So in a way, they're actually comparing themselves to you.
It does happen. There's a
Really?
term called transference, which is how the client feels towards the therapist, and that can change the dynamic of the therapeutic process. So you have to like check in on that, you have to assess it, you have to measure it, and you have to try to like navigate it to keep your alliance working.
Do you find that a lot of your clients are ages towards you?
Fortunately, no. When you're selecting clients, you usually do like a consult, which is like a 15-minute conversation to really understand, what the dynamic is, what their needs are, see if you can help them. And then you do a little bit of like a mock therapy session for the remaining time of the consult to make sure that it's a good fit. And if the client decides to work with me, usually it's a really good dynamic and it works out. When I was working with the substance use population a couple of years ago, I noticed that there was some level of reservation when a client would come in and they would see a young clinician fresh out of school and they were in their 30s, 40s, 50s, using for several decades. And they would think to themselves, is this kid in recovery? How could he help me? What kind of skills is he going to teach me? And I had to kind of overcome those reservations by proving that I know what I'm talking about, that I'm practicing things by the book, but I'm also creating that environment to learn from the client, not just pretending like I know everything, which I don't.
And then, what are some things people should avoid or be cautious of when it comes to their mental health?
Ooh, really great question. As I mentioned before too, like comparison is a really, really, really huge thing. People compare themselves to others without knowing the entire story. There was something on social media that was circling around a long time ago where it's like the person that walks compares himself to the person with the bike, who compares themselves to the person with the car, to the sports car, to the yacht, to the plane. And people tend to forget to be mindful and present and grateful for what they have. So comparison is the first part. Second of all is chasing something. When you feel like you're consistently chasing something, it's forgetting where you are currently. And that also, again, takes you away from being grounded and mindful and just aware of what is going on in your life. The other thing is numbing. So, like excessive amounts of phone time, using substances inappropriately, or having an unhealthy relationship with your phone or substances or even other people, because that can really change the way that you see yourself or the way that you feel about yourself. And also, this is kind of like the more common ones, being your own worst enemy. At the end of the day, you're waking up with yourself, you're going to bed with yourself, you're spending 24/7 with yourself, and a lot of people let their own mind create the negative space, and nothing else in their environment is supporting that. So being able to separate what's going on in your mind from the reality of a situation can be really helpful in, improving overall quality of life. One of the things that I explain to my clients is I use the rock example. I say, if you're going for a walk and you notice that a rock is in your shoe, what do? Most of the time they say, I take the rock out. And I say, okay, so if you're going to take the rock out, our thoughts are the same way. So like we're walking around and we're overthinking or we're having a lot of negative thoughts, it's the equivalent of having a rock in our shoe. The only difference is thoughts are not tangible. Like with a rock, we could physically reach in and take the rock out.
Yeah.
But our thoughts, what we could do is there are interventions that we can use to help a person become more separated from their thoughts, look at them more objectively, and be able to reframe them in a way that helps them feel better. So in a way, it's metaphorically taking a rock out of their shoe.
Gotcha. Something I want to go back to is you mentioned chasing,
Yes.
right? Can chasing be good? Can it be beneficial, right? Let's just say someone is chasing a goal, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to have some level of, motivation to do things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about it from a stress perspective, there's two kinds of stress. There's distress, which is like the harmful kind of stress. That's the one that can lead to like health issues, prolonged, and there's what's called EU stress, which is the good kind of stress. When we experience small amounts of stress, that can actually like make us feel more motivated, make us feel more energetic, make us feel more alert, more focused, more concentrated, and kind of ready to go. If we know that like we want to be here, we have to break down the steps from getting here to here, and it's okay to just go through the steps. But what happens is people start to go towards their bar, and once they're about to hit the bar, they push it higher. So they're never actually meeting their goal. That's when it becomes maladaptive. Because what they're doing is if they say, I want to get to 10 clients a week, and then they get to 9, and then they set their bar at 15, they're never celebrating the fact that they hit 10. They're always just thinking about the fact that they still have, 6 more clients that they need to get to until they hit that 15 mark. But if they keep it at 10, they hit that 10, they give themselves a little pat on the back, and then refocus on how they'll get to 15. That sets them up for a greater level of mental health on their journey towards success.
Would you say that celebrating the small wins is good?
Oh my God, it's the most important thing.
Is it really?
Absolutely. There are the cliches where like if I woke up, like that's a win. It really is, and we can't deny that at all. But people don't realize that where you wind up is usually a result of several minimal decisions that you make throughout the day or throughout the week or throughout the month. So if you want to set up a business or you want to get a certain kind of job, updating your resume is a win. Sending out that first application is a win. Reaching out to somebody that you perceive to be a mentor is a win. And anytime you get that positive feedback, it basically conditions your reward way to like keep going and keep wanting more. Because if you're always focused on the end result, you're not paying attention to the journey. And that's usually the most fun part about it. Even though it's stressful and annoying and there's setbacks, when you look back on it, you usually say, I'm glad I did it, but I wish I enjoyed it more. So the small victories are the ones that keep you grounded enough to get there.
For the viewers out there, celebrate your wins.
Celebrate your wins.
Would you say a person's mental health is more affected by genetics or their environment?
Wow, you're coming in
hot
with these.
Oh
these
yeah.
Damn, yeah.
I can't help myself.
It's both.
Yeah,
it's both.
Fair.
As you grow up, your brain is so plastic. It has the ability to be flexed. It could be, malleable. It acquires new information based on what you're exposed to. So as you grow up, you're getting fed information from your environment, but your brain is being biologically programmed to support the information that you're being fed in a process known as schemas. Schemas are thought processes that help us make sense of the world. So as you grow, you develop new schemas as you acquire new information and new information and new information. The neurotransmitters and the neural connections that don't get used go away, and the ones that get used a lot get stronger. So it's kind of this like symbiotic relationship where like you're a product of your environment, but you're also a product of your own biological conditioning. Especially with addiction, there are children that grow up in environments where their parents are addicted to substances, and they can either grow up to follow in those footsteps, or they could grow up and never touch a drug in their life. It really just depends on the environment and how they perceive the environment to be. So, I would say in some situations we are biologically programmed towards certain mental illnesses or certain symptoms. And then over time, trauma, for example, a perfectly healthy individual growing up can experience a really traumatic event, and that could change the mental health trajectory for the rest of their life. So it really is a very individualized basis, but there certainly is a symbiotic relationship between the nature versus nurture argument in mental health.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense. Of course, there's, for both, I mean, there's some level where, it's going to affect someone, right?
Absolutely.
Do you find it harder working with clients that have severe anxiety or severe depression?
Ooh, okay. Clinically, I think depression is probably a more challenging diagnosis to support with. And when I say challenging, it doesn't mean worse or better. It just means, when you look at the definitions of each, depression is defined as a lack of motivation. Right then and there, if somebody has a lack of motivation, and the way to do coping strategies requires some kind of motivation, you're kind of fighting a losing battle. Because we have to find one thing that the client feels motivated enough to do to hopefully start to circumnavigate that depressive episode. Anxiety, on the other hand, anxiety is usually just worrying about what's coming up or what is unknown. Usually when somebody's experiencing anxiety, there's ways to create structure and calm to help reduce the anxiety in the moment to focus on it clinically and help that client move forward. But then what happens is the client starts thinking about whether or not they're doing it right, and then the cycle goes down in that way.
Yeah.
But I would say it's harder for a client to probably recover from really severe chronic depression than really severe anxiety, but they're both equally detrimental and can significantly impede on somebody's quality of life. And it also depends on the individual.
Of course,
but, clinically, from my experience, I think depression has been more challenging to help clients with than anxiety.
Yeah, that motivation component's very important.
Absolutely.
And then, are there any universal practical steps that anyone can follow to improve their mental health?
Oh yeah, breathe.
Okay.
Just breathe.
Yeah?
Yeah, keep your head where your feet are and breathe. Sometimes people tend to get so worked up over something that's a really simple fix. And if they just kind of take a second, to step away and breathe and then come back to that problem, 9 out of 10 times they'll be able to fix it. For example, when you call a customer service line because your phone isn't working, they usually just tell you to kind of turn it off, turn it back on again. It's really, really, really frustrating, but it works. And then when it works, you're like, why didn't I think of just doing that in the moment? You think something else is significantly wrong. Same thing with health anxiety too. A lot of clients that I worked with have some level of health anxiety. So if they have an upset stomach, they immediately think it's stomach cancer or colon cancer or IBS or colitis or something like that. But then when you ask them hey, what did you eat that day? And they'll say leftover sushi or Chinese food. Usually more likely than that, it's something minimal that could have influenced their stomach. So I think pausing and breathing is a really, really, really huge thing. And the next one is spend time with friends, actual time with people, not on your phones. Just hang out with your friends, have meaningful conversations, talk about things that you're excited about. And the last one is the number one emotion that is linked to happiness is just gratitude. So when we practice gratitude, thinking about what we're grateful for, and things to look forward to can really change the way that we perceive our environment and help us feel just an overall sense of hey, it could be worse, even though maybe it could be better. I'm just grateful for what I have right now, and I'm gonna rock with what I have, because I think people always just want more. They want more. Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. Just thinking about what we're grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. Just thinking about what we're grateful for, and it's cliche because a lot of times it's do a gratitude list, and you can do that, right? But if your shoes are comfortable and your shirt's comfortable and your pants are comfortable, that's something to be grateful for right there. If you have a car that runs, that's something to be grateful for. If you have food, something to be grateful for, especially good food.
Yeah.
Good food, good music, and good company. The trifecta of a good time. That's all you need. You only need two of those things at the same time, and you have a good life.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool. And then, I guess to get a little more about you, right? What made you want to get into the field of psychology?
Yeah, totally. So I love this field. I love it so much. My passion for mental health started when I was 18 years old. I was a freshman in college. My intro to psych professor, her name was Dr. Beverly Knox, was so passionate about this field. And I was sitting in her class, and I just loved it from the moment I walked in to the moment I left. It was just an amazing class. It made me want to pursue this field. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to just learn more about the mind and how people like think and perceive things. So I declared a second major in psychology like the first week of that semester. So I had a bachelor's in criminal justice and a bachelor's in psych, and I just devoted my education to learning about human behavior. After college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to save and make money, but I also wasn't really ready for grad school at that time. I was just a little burnt out and I was tired. Um, Additionally, when I was in high school, I lost a cousin to a heroin overdose. I was 15 years old. He was 23 at the time. And my brother, he's a social worker. He knew once that situation happened that he wanted to be a social worker. That was his goal. For me, it's like I knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't feel like I was emotionally prepared enough to like work with substance use populations. It was in the back of my head, but once I found my passion for psych, I was still on the fence about actually pursuing substance use. But once I spent a couple years after undergrad working in recruiting and corporate, I was sitting in my office in California, and I remember just thinking, I'm like, you know what, I'm ready.
Yeah.
I could do this. So I went back to school for mental health counseling with a concentration in substance use, and the rest is history. And now
there you go.
Thrilled. I miss that field every day. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll ever go back?
I'm happy with where I'm at right now. I got a really great spot. If the opportunity presented itself, I'd be open to it. But at this point, I'm kind of just keeping my head where I'm taking my own advice. I'm keeping my head where my feet are at. I'm kind of just going through the motions, but that place will always have a special place in my heart for sure.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, very cool. And then I don't know, I feel like just what I've seen of you, like you seem to be a pretty ambitious guy. Where does this come from? Like, what makes you tick? What drives you to immerse yourself in so many different things?
Wow. So, I always grew up in like a very ambitious household. My dad worked extremely hard throughout my life, like very, 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 very hard. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom. So, women are superpowers, like they can juggle the home life, they can juggle working, So I always saw like a very ambitious family dynamic growing up. And I think that instilled a lot of like hardworking values in me. But I've also just been like a very naturally curious person. So like if I'm really curious about something, even if it's completely outside of my scope, I'll just spend like hours researching it, or I'll just give it a shot. Specifically like with recruiting, I remember like I was applying for jobs out of undergrad and I kept getting called by recruiting firms, and I'm like, wait, what do you guys do? I'm like, it seems like you're trying to help me get a job. Like, what do you do? And he's like, I work in recruiting. And I was like, how do I get into that? He's like, we're hiring. And then that got me a job in recruiting, and it was always just curiosity. But I think that's really what, and I'm also never satisfied. I feel like once I, do something for a long period of time and I learn it kind of like where at the back of my hand, my mind starts to go, how else can I acquire new knowledge and new experiences?
Yeah.
And also when I really want something, I won't stop until I won't stop until I get it.
Really?
Yeah, I won't stop.
Yeah. I feel like you get bored easily. I feel like you'll do something, and if you'll do it well, and you'll be like, all right, like, what's next?
Where'd that come from? You're right. Even like with teaching, when I teach a class for several semesters, my goal is to tweak the curriculum a little bit. One, because it helps me grow, and also I want to stay up to date with the research. I want to keep it more entertaining for the students. Same thing with clinical. When I've been working with a specific population for a really long period of time, I want to do like additional trainings to learn more. I feel like the more I push myself to grow, it opens up a significant amount of doors. And if you had asked me when I was 18, 19 years old, like if I thought I'd be here right now, I would have laughed in your face and said like, absolutely not.
Yeah, you think so?
100%. Yeah, because I didn't really know where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
I had an idea, but I didn't. A lot of the things that came to me in my career, I didn't think would come this early. I didn't. Most people don't really get a job teaching 4 months out of grad school. I was able to. I was privileged enough to get that opportunity, and it's been 5 years now. Same thing with an administrative type of position. 3 years out of your master's is possible, but it's rare.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of at that point in my career now where it's like I did what I thought was going to take a lot of my career to do. So now the answer is like, now what?
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of in that stage now, but it's a privilege to be at that spot, and I'm grateful to my family for motivating me to do it.
And then, what would you say are your long-term goals, ambitions? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Wow. I would like my practice to get a little bit larger.
Okay.
Right now, when I think of career opportunities, again, I'm very happy with where I'm at professionally. And I feel like I've made, great strides to get here. Professionally, I'm not really sure what I'd like next because I really do love having a private practice and I want to keep loving it. I don't want it to get to a point where I perceive it to be a job. Because I really want to be 100% present and mindful for my clients. And if I feel like if I'm doing 40 or 50 sessions a week, eventually my threshold and energy will decline. And I'll need to figure out a way to prioritize more time off and everything like that. So, ask me in a week, I'll say I want the biggest private practice on Long Island. Ask me tomorrow, I'll say I want to do just a tiny practice that pays my bills, keeps my family fed, and allows me to do what I got to do. But ultimately, I'd like to keep teaching. I'd like to do my private practice. And I still want to keep giving back to the next generation of healthcare professionals, whether that's teaching, mentorship, or hiring them and giving them clients and more doing the supervisory things. There's a lot of options, but
Gotcha.
That's where I'm thinking right now.
Okay, sounds good. Are there any, I guess, outside of your career, are there any goals or ambitions?
More animals.
Okay.
I'm a huge animal guy.
Really?
Yep, I love animals, so I definitely want as many animals as I could possibly get. I really think that's it.
Okay.
I'm pretty, like I said, knock on wood, I'm really content with where my life is as a person and as a professional.
Yeah.
I would like to maybe start getting more involved with volunteer work when my schedule opens up, whether it's starting a nonprofit or doing something like that, or just getting involved in volunteering opportunities more frequently. But right now I want more animals, but I need more space before I get more animals.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And then this question is a little out there, but I think
okay.
it kind of ties into the last question. Yeah. But who is Daniel Bleecher, right? I know you as a professor, a colleague, but who would you how would you describe yourself as a person?
Wow, these are amazing questions. I'm really proud of you, Rich.
Oh, thank you.
You're doing great. All right, so who is Daniel Bleecher? I would say he's a nerd with a big heart.
Okay.
So I think, when it comes down to it, I'm very loyal to the people that I care about. And I really, really, really want everybody in my life to be successful, whether that's my friends, my colleagues, or even my students. I want everybody in my life to be successful, and sometimes I feel like I want it more than them.
Okay.
And that certainly, results in a level of burnout or extra frustration that I don't necessarily need to carry, but I do carry. But and I would say that he's somebody who is really ambitious, but humble enough to know that there's a lot that he doesn't know, and he's not afraid to ask for help to get it. And he tries to model those things with his students and the people that he's responsible for overseeing and mentoring. And I think the last part about it is, sometimes and this is to be really vulnerable, sometimes I think there is a level of confusion into who Daniel Bleecher is sometimes.
Yeah.
Because when you're always switching gears from teacher to administrator to clinician, sometimes you forget which front you're putting on. And it creates this level of divide between, corporate, education, professional, and personal. So it's like a fragmented mindset at times. But I know when I'm with my friends, I'm Daniel Bleecher. But when I'm teaching, I'm Professor Dan.
Yeah.
When I'm an administrator, I'm Dan Bleecher, or like when I'm a clinician, my clients don't know anything about me. They just know that I'm there to help them.
Yeah.
So, I think, like I said, I'm a nerd with a big heart who cares about the people in his life and the animals in my life, and I just want everybody to be okay and do okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And I think there's nothing wrong. I think it's great that you have these different roles, and I think and also change is good, right? I think it's good. I mean, that's how we, I think that's, as human beings, we're wired to want to do new things, and I think a lot of times, I know more so with my parents and grandparents, where it's like they, to do the same thing for a long period of time is normal. As I feel like now in this generation, it's more common to want to go and experience new and different things.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I try to do with my students is I try to follow like the ABC method, which is just always be curious. I try to mentor my students to take initiative, to ask questions, to find their own answers, to try to like really prioritize their own education by giving them the tools that they need to be successful and hoping that they use them to be successful. That's not something that's really taught in elementary school, middle school, or high school. And I want my students to have that like valuable skill set. People don't realize that what opportunities college can provide to you if you don't ask the question or take the initiative to go for it. And you have people that are in front of you that have been in your shoes that are the best people to ask. So you're right. I think a lot of people, should act on that curiosity, and they should take advantage of it, because who knows you might wind up working with your professor and doing a podcast. You never know unless you
guys.
ask.
You never know. So ask questions. Stay curious.
Always stay curious. ABC.
That's
always
it.
Be curious.
I like that.
Yeah.
How do you manage your own mental health, right? Especially being in a profession where you're constantly around people who are mentally struggling.
No, that's huge, right? Separation.
Okay.
Learning to leave work at work and allowing to be home at home. So, I used to have a routine. Like when I worked in inpatient, I had a lanyard that I had to wear. Whenever I would leave the inpatient and got in my car, I took the lanyard off and I put it right in my glove box. And that was emblematic of like taking off the weight of working in a residential treatment facility and then switching into the mindset of going home. So being able to like compartmentalize work from home is like a super, super, super huge advantage. And additionally, I really like what I do. So, it doesn't really get under my skin as much as it would if I didn't like what I did. But when it does start to get to me, I'm really grateful to have like friends that are in a similar field that I could talk to. I have a really good social network. Again, my dogs are my lifesavers, so just going home somewhere with them on the couch is really, really huge. And prioritizing like other areas of health. So I try to eat well, I try to drink enough water, I try to get enough sleep, I try to go to the gym, and I just invest in myself. Are you into
optimizing?
Like time?
Okay.
Yeah, so like, I'm really good at like making appointments, but I'm not really good at like initiative. So for example, like if I have to be somewhere at like 6 o'clock, I'm gonna do that. So like I sign up for like personal training at times. So like if I'll work out with somebody, or if I know I have a couple hours on a Saturday where I'm not doing anything, I'd rather fill that time with clients instead of doom scrolling. So it's kind of just utilizing my time when I have it to do things that are helpful to me and not gonna make me feel worse about myself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And any final thoughts? Any message to the viewers or anything?
I think my message to the viewers would be, you got this. Things may be scary, whatever transition that you're going through, but you got it. There's people there that want to help you. Ask them for that help, and the further ahead you get of it, the better off you'll be. If you anticipate something going wrong, or you have current things going on, speak up, before you're in too deep and it's too hard to get out of it. And never suffer in silence. There's always people that, again, are available to help you, that want to listen to you, and that would be more than happy to stay up past their bedtime to make sure that you're feeling okay. If you don't have those people in your life, find them. because that means you're not in the right social circle. I think that, and work hard. You know, when you do what you love, work hard, and it'll be nothing but rewarding to you down the line.
Dan, thank you very much.
Rich, my pleasure, man.